Honored guests, we are welcoming you to the second day of the first annual conference of the Ministry of Finance, Economic Recovery and Growth Beyond COVID. For today's opening, we are inviting on the stage to welcome you the Mayor of the city of Skopje, the hometown of this conference, Mr. Petre Šilegov.
Dear President of the Republic of North Macedonia, Minister of Finance, members of the government, Vice Prime Ministers, first of all, let me thank the organization of the Ministry on this conference, Economic Recovery Beyond COVID, where we have the opportunity to see our future options and facing the challenge imposed by the pandemic. In this direction, it is very important to emphasize that we are on the same side, representatives of public institutions, executive government, and self-government units that are for the service of the citizens, also international factors, partners, civil sector organizations that also work for the citizens and their needs. The objective of this conference is to promote synergy of ideas and creators of policies and all stakeholders in order to improve political dialogue of financial economic topic from the regional, international, and also local importance. The pandemic encountered by countries, the countries were not ready. The fact that we are facing a new and dangerous virus meant for all of us that there is no universal procedure to tackle health and economic consequences, and that we need to create policies together. That means that we were forced to improvise, to introduce fast changes at all levels, saving the lives and health of the citizens and also saving their social security by tackling the economic consequences that meant lost jobs, shortages, grey economy, and unpopular occurrences. The city of Skopje at the beginning of April last year held a session of the council where we adopted a series of measures through which we tried to help the local economy, especially in the part of construction and catering industry. In the sector of construction, it was temporary halt on the entertainment park building. We had the initiative to build over 20 roads to help companies in the area of construction to survive the difficult period, and also we provided utility services paid by construction companies to the city to be able to pay that with 18 installments. In addition, additional subsidy for the catering industry, hospitality industry, for the lease from 15 to 5 denars for a square meter, the minimum prescribed by law for the overall 2020. We reduced the fees for registration of companies in 2020 also at the legal minimum. Where we had the chance, we also provided additional capacities on the public services, for the hospitality industry to be able to thrive. We also recommended schools to provide space and also exemption for the lease for the schools. Unfortunately, as local self-government units within the law, we have limited opportunities to introduce additional measures that would facilitate the economic consequences. We have winter ahead of us. The new wave of the virus also makes the situation critical, even though we have a good rate of vaccination. That's why we have to be a step ahead to find out new ways, modalities to overcome the period we have ahead of us. I will not go more into details. I will listen from the position where I'm standing. The city of Skopje remains a partner and a helpful hand. And I hope that what we undertook with the measures to facilitate the consequences of the pandemic through the measures undertaken by the government as a whole would facilitate the functioning of the business sector, which is the only sector that creates value in the economy. And I'm convinced that through the exchange of ideas within this conference, all of us together will contribute to the increasing of coherence and in planning of the budget of the country, the national budget and the local budgets. The recommendations for policies and the knowledge that would arise from the conference will be used as the input in formulation of policies for the next year and long term. Unfortunately, in time like this, we are all have something to lose as companies and all stakeholders. That's why all of us, we have to get involved to find out optimum solutions to facilitate the problems, because at the end of the day, we are all at the same side, the side of life. Thank you.
As a special guest of the first annual conference of the Ministry of Finance, we are honored to invite on the stage the President of the Republic of North Macedonia, Mr. Stevo Pendarovski.
So good morning. Poštovani
Dear participants, dear guests, dear friends, it's a great honor to address the first international conference titled Skopje Economic and Financial Forum, organized upon initiative of the Ministry of Finance. I wish for this first conference, which has the objective to strengthen the public dialogue for the important economic and financial topics in the country and the region, to become a traditional event. The title of the yesterday's and today's discussion, Economic Recovery and Growth Beyond COVID, is a topic that is popular in the whole world, and there are debates on it, and it's important that all discussions should be led based on realistic data in order for the creators of economic policies to propose solutions that would provide citizens to safely pass this period of crisis. Our lives and the overall economic activity for a year now have been suffering under the pandemic, the measures and the restrictions that are undertaken for the prevention of the pandemic. Unfortunately, at this point, we cannot provide an estimate for how long this condition will last and what would be the economic consequences in the end. Even the strongest economies marked great drops and losses in almost all industrial branches. All countries in the world facing the pandemic fought and are still fighting to keep and maintain the health of their citizens and also to neutralize the harmful economic consequences. The global economy is still fragile and the challenges are great. As opposed to last year, the general economic prognosis has improved, although the recovery, according to the expectations, is slow. Our economy is not the exception of the world tendencies. When adopting all the measures for protection of population, the primary goal was to minimize the losses of the economy and to help the most endangered sectors, of course, as far to the extent that it was possible in such conditions. In that context, companies fought the fight to continue their activity and also to keep their employees and to maintain the quality of the products and services that they offer. It is clear that the losses are great and that we would need time to recover the Macedonian economy that even before the pandemic was not in great condition. But what is important that we have enough information and analysis to evaluate, to estimate which decisions were wrong and which produced positive effects. Dear distinguished guests, even before the start of the pandemic, our country, after a long wait, became a full member of the NATO alliance, apart from the safety component. On a middle term and long term, we expect it to result in economic stability and predictability, increased confidence by international partners, and new perspective in the for the investments. Last year, we had a bit of a wait for the EU integration caused by blockages whose arguments are opposing the values of the European Union. And as I've said so many times, and I will repeat, the road for full membership in the EU is #1 priority, because for the European values and the principles of the joint European market, there is no better alternative for our country. Distinguished guests, the pandemic of COVID, despite the hit to the economy as fundamental driving force of societies, put the political stability on a test. The rule of law faced challenges without a doubt. The authority of international organization was also a question. Also, solidarity of the richer countries towards the poorer countries. We must also mention the thesis that as individual states, we are not isolated islands, that with the individual efforts, we cannot oppose the danger threatening the whole human race. That's why we need to act jointly on a global level. It is undoubtedly that immunization is the key factor to exit the crisis, and in this process we cannot allow slowing down the dynamics or unproportional distribution of vaccines. In a time of crisis, we need to turn to each other. Our joint objective is to build a safer world where priority would be the well-being, health, and the happiness of people, a world where education, culture, science, and social development will be more important than military power and control over people or the race for material goods. On this occasion, I would like to emphasize a very crucial segment when we talk about economy, which is very important for the Republic of North Macedonia, and I believe for the rest of the countries. Without solid and continuous investments in human capital, economic development cannot be sustainable. For that purpose, a condition is to give the support for young people that are educating themselves and creating this country. They are the future of our society, and the institutions should do everything in their power to support their ideas and their views. Adequate education is the fundamental factor for development of human capital. Society is obligated to develop the potential of young people and to invest in their ideas. I believe that in the post-COVID period, we'll have a set of political and economic measures that will promote production of new and fresh concepts in this area. At the end, I would like to wish you a fruitful second day of the conference, where I believe that there will be exchange of ideas, analysis, and recommendations. Thank you.
It is the time for the first panel debate for today. Please welcome our first moderator, Mr. Aris Vlachos, Chairman of the Hellenic Business Association in North Macedonia.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, good morning, and welcome to this panel. Allow me first to congratulate the Ministry of Finance and, in particular, Minister Besimi for organizing such a high-level forum. I would also like to express my appreciation for the privilege of being the coordinator in a panel with so many distinguished personalities. The topic of our panel is public and private investments and competitiveness, a very hot and interesting topic with many aspects: available funds, recovery and growth, public and private investments, strength of budgets, climate change and green recovery will be commented by our speakers. Let me now introduce to our speakers. Please, take your seats. I need a little bit of correction. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm starting from Mr. Fatmir Bitici, the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of Economic Affairs. Welcome, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, and thank you for being with us. Mr. Juncker Richtering, the EBRD First Vice President. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Mrs. Liliana Pavlova, Vice President of the European Investment Bank. Welcome, Madam. Mr. Kreshnik Bekteshi, Minister of Economy. Welcome, Mr. Minister. Mr. Blagoj Bocharevsky, Minister of Transport and Communications. Welcome, Mr. Minister. Mr. Ari Naim, Regional Manager, Central and Southeastern Europe, IFC. Welcome, sir. Mrs. Georgieva Elisabeta, the Vice President of the Economic Chamber. Welcome, Madam. Mrs. Daniela Arsovska. Welcome, Daniela, the President of the Union of the Chambers. And Mr. Nebi Hoxha, the President of Economic Chamber of North and West Macedonia. Welcome, sir. So, a kind request to all of our panelists. In order to not run out of time, please limit your answers, your statements to maximum 5 minutes for the first round and 3 minutes for the second round. Thank you, and I'm starting right now with the first question addressed to Vice President, Deputy Prime Minister Fatmir Bitici. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, the government of North Macedonia adopted 6 anti-COVID package measures for supporting the most vulnerable industries. Also, the intervention investment plan was adopted as a boost for the Macedonian economy in the post-COVID period. What are the expectations from your side and the government in short and medium term in view of the economic recovery? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Vlahos. Dear participants, speakers, Minister of Finance, I think that this is one of the unique opportunities actually to talk about the past years and past year and the future. It is quite challenging actually question because in order to answer what are the expectations from our side as a government, I think that we have to talk how we dealt with the pandemic. Actually, at the beginning of COVID, we had several options, either to see what the big economies are doing and then use the same receipt in addressing the challenges of pandemic, or seeing what is the actual need of our economy and follow the economy of our country. And we decided at that time, I remember we were together with the Minister of Finance, advisors of the Prime Minister, that we decided that we will follow our logic. And the logic is that we follow our economic structure, that we, at the same time as we prepare each of the economic measures, we will tackle in order to respond to the immediate need as an effect of the pandemics, but on the other side, to think about possible recovery. And At the end of the day, I think the indicators that we have seen are quite positive. We addressed the crisis with around 11% of GDP, or approximately 1.1 billion euros. Public funds used for addressing the problems facing because of pandemics. At the end of the year, we realized that actually we were among the countries that has the least decrease of GDP growth. It was around 4.5% at the end of the year, which according to our analysis, if the economic measures would not been in place, it would have been 8.7%. And that's quite a significant achievement. And immediately listening and discussing with our partners, IFIs and the other institutions, where everyone was suggesting around the world that each economy should boost the public and private investment, we came out with an intervention plan for investment. An intervention plan for investment which actually tackles or it covers a period of 7 years, which is the same period as the period of European Commission help towards the third countries, 2021, 2027, in which actually we are planning to invest around 8.2 billion, out of which I have to say around 50% private investment. Boosting private investment together with all the public investment in the main areas. Public investment focused on 3 main areas, I would say, which probably will speak about competitiveness not only our local economy but regional economy. So the public investment, private investment will be focused on manufacturing, retail, and tourism sector, as well with food production as a sector. Not forgetting the energy sector as one of the main, I would say, sectors for boosting the GDP growth. On the other hand, the public investment will be focused on tackling the infrastructure, road, railways, plus public health, plus local communal infrastructure. Altogether, this speaks that actually, in order to boost the investment in the post-recovery period, we will have actually to think on several things. First is to speak about how we will improve at this moment the local competitiveness, because improving the local competitiveness will mean improving the regional competitiveness instead of regional competition. And therefore, we have actually undertaken several measures that I might speak in the upcoming 3 minutes.
Thank you so much for this very interesting statement and for respecting the time. Thank you so much. So I'm passing right now to Mr. Eugen Richtering from EBRD, and here's my first question. What are, in your view, the key factors that would enable mobilization of a higher share of private sector financing for green projects, and what programs does EBRD have in place to support this? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and also from my side, very much a thank you to the Minister of Finance for organizing this conference. Very well organized, very timely, very important topic. And that makes for us, it's my first visit after the holidays. And of course, I do this to please the Minister to be here. But not only, because for us, North Macedonia is a very, very important country for our investments. If I tell you that cumulative, we invested over 2 billion euros in the country, and every year we invest about 150 million euros, roughly 50% public sector, 50% private sector. And our experience in North Macedonia is picture perfect. Our financial results are very good. So when I called my syndications department and actually asked them how much of our risk have we been able to syndicate or sell off to private investors, and this is a little bit linked to your questions, actually the answer was over the last few years, 0. And I was a little bit surprised because obviously what we see from the outset here from far, far, far away London, we see political stability, we see regional integration, we see an improved infrastructure, we see rule of law, and this is all things investors like. So that made me think a little bit, what's the real problem? And actually we are here with a larger delegation, including also two of my colleagues originally from America. And actually one of the colleagues from America just came from there, and when she told her family she was going to North Macedonia, the family said, "Oh, isn't there a war?" And I know this might seem very, very far-fetched to you, and this is far, far, far away America. But yesterday evening, we had a dinner with probably your most prominent wine maker with the whole team, Tikves. And they put it in a different way. When they actually go to their markets and say, well, this is wine from North Macedonia, they actually do have to explain where North Macedonia is. So the point I'm trying to make is, it's actually also about perception. And now I come back now to this conference. I think these kind of conferences, they are a unique way to actually make sure that this perception about North Macedonia is changing, and all the people here, we will spread the word as well. My last comment, and I will be really well within time, we also, of course, have to see the restrictions of North Macedonia. With a population of slightly over 2 million, it's a landlocked country, you cannot do it alone. So that's why we and also our friends from EIB and IFC, we're so much also supporting improving the infrastructure. That's why we are so much supportive of the government's plan for EU accession, because we do believe that all these things together will actually make sure that foreign investors will discover or rediscover North Macedonia. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. It is obvious that the role of EBRD is crucial in the situation that we are experiencing now. So I'm passing now to Mrs. Liliana Pavlova from the EIB, and here's my first question. Dear Mrs. Pavlova, from the perspective of the Bank of the European Union and the leading multilateral financial institutions in the region, how do you see the economic impact of COVID-19 in the region, especially on the private sector? The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Vlachos, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, fellow colleagues, panelists. First of all, thank you very much, Minister, dear Fatmir. It's really amazing that we have this opportunity, first of all, to relaunch our physical gatherings, meetings, and events like this. This is a very timely event and a topic of a great importance. And I believe it's also the right momentum to discuss how to support growth, competitiveness of the country and of the region, because the plans we are setting today should have the long-term sustainable impact on the economy and on the region. And speaking on the impact of the region, just a few words. I think last year and a half was very special and different for all of us. We had to change the way we live, the way we work, and the virus for which maybe many in Europe were hoping to stay and to remain out of Europe really very rapidly spread around the world. So all economies were impacted, and the most impacted were specifically, as you said, the SMEs, the private sector suffered the most. So as governments implemented restrictions, lockdowns, and the mobility in EU declined by 60%, the market collapsed by some 25%. The immediate global EU and national response, which introduced specific measures, really provided the opportunity, and the liquidity crunch was was avoided. As part of the global EU response, we are part of which was also the European Investment Bank. A special European Guarantee Fund was established in support and providing the necessary liquidity for the SMEs. Also, as part of Team Europe, we have committed ourselves to support the overall commitment of all of us, part of Team Europe, to support the region, to support our not only regional but global partners. So at the European Investment Bank, we committed ourselves to provide 1.7 billion euro with new and with accelerated investments to support the region. However, the support should not stop here, as this is, as I said, the right moment really to see and to plan. First of all, to analyze the lessons learned, and then, of course, to plan well our future investments. And I'm really grateful to the government, and especially to Minister of Finance, Mr. Busimi, for this very creative, I should say, thinking on how to streamline the funding, because European Union funding, usually like IPA, in this case IPA 3 funds, are channeled, are used mainly as a streamlined grant financing in support of strategic transport and environmental projects, which are, of course, of great importance. However, we need, and I'm glad to see this, to start thinking out of the box, to become more innovative when we plan and we see how best to leverage the EU financing using the different instruments we have at our disposal. And we, the European Investment Bank, having our really great experience in deploying the so-called Juncker Plan, the European Plan for Strategic Investments, give us really not only the knowledge but also the confidence that this type of instruments, which mobilize private capital and which support the private sector investments, and also are the best way to leverage the EU funding and to use the funds available. As we know, the Western Balkans investment framework, those 9 billion of euro which are envisaged and committed for the region, out of which we have 1 billion euro of guarantees. So now it's in our hands really together to identify what are the best instruments to support the region. We can, as a first step and idea, one of our proposals is, for example, to have two-dimension guarantee schemes. One, a non-granular guarantee in support of the private sector, specially targeted to digital transformation and digitalization, energy efficiency and renewables, and those really specific, addressing the specific needs of the private sector in this providing this opportunity to mobilize. And also through our European Investment Fund, which is part of the EIB group, our specialized financing arm in supporting with more riskier financing for the private sector and for SMEs to provide support for innovation, digitalization of the different companies with risk-sharing instruments, which is another opportunity. Of course, we are ready to provide our technical, financial and advisory support in setting up the right framework and also the right instruments and funds in order to be able to deploy successfully the funds available, because I should say the capital and the European Union funds, they are available. It's in our hands to decide how long-term in a sustainable manner to plan these investments. I would stop here, maybe to give opportunity for the second round of questions.
Thank you very much, Liliana, for your positive view. And now we are passing to Minister Kreshnik-Bekteshi. And here's my first question. Dear Minister, what are the plans in your ministry in the direction to encourage private investments in the renewable energy sector? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Aris. Honorable President of North Macedonia, Mr. Pendarovsky, colleague Besimi, first of all, I would like to show my gratitude regarding the great organization of this event. Necessary event, especially in the times we are facing at the moment, but also the presence, the boost and the motivation with the presence of the President of North Macedonia, which, having in mind the competencies, is not directly involved in these measures, but always gives us a motivation within the government in order to work and recover as fast as possible, but also to meet the needs of the citizens and the business community overall, especially in a time of crisis, is of great significance for us. The Ministry of Economy, especially in the energy sector, has already come up with huge reforms which are fully harmonized in the aspect of the legislation with the EU acquis and directives, and we have used the time of pandemics as an opportunity, having in mind that it is said that sometimes the crisis can become an opportunity, especially for countries which are in the developing phase. Therefore, we have come up with several opportunities, not only for the public sector, but also we have directly involved the private sector in order to stimulate new investments, especially in photovoltaics, in wind parks, but also in cogeneration power plants. Therefore, we have already finished with the calls regarding the new investments which are ongoing at the moment, using the premium model, which a model is fully transformed from the feeding one which was previously in North Macedonia. At the moment ongoing is another call, so by the end of this year in North Macedonia we'll have the opportunity to have an installed capacity of more than 130 megawatts of photovoltaics, which before 3 years was quite scarce or limited, using the feeding tariff model of not more than 18 megawatts installed capacity, and having in mind that North Macedonia has a huge capacity in this sector, so we are using all our capacity in order to do so. Even though the gasification of the country in most of the developed countries is not seen as an environmental friendly investment, it's for us very important regarding the diversification and the security of supply of energy. So we already signed the agreement with our neighbor Greece, and we are now starting in order to build and construct the second interconnector, which beside the diversification of the supply would increase the competitiveness, but also would directly decrease also the prices, which the companies, the industries, but also the households can have even better prices, and parallel the industry to become more competitive, but North Macedonia to become a transit country also when it comes to the transport of natural gas, not only in the Western Balkans, but hopefully in the near future beyond that. So in the Ministry of Economy at the moment we have already adopted also the new law on energy efficiency. We have adopted the climate strategy together with the Ministry of Environment and Mr. Nureddini, where we have foreseen several measures regarding the quality of construction in North Macedonia, but also in order to decrease the consumption of electricity in North Macedonia. So by doing that, we think that we can achieve the goal in order to transform the energy sector by 2027 in our country, which is fully linked with the agenda of the government, but also with the agenda of the European Union, which is the green agenda regarding the increase of the quality of life, but also in order to save lives because of the pollution. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time. Thanks for your detailed answer, Mr. Minister, and the great achievements, the information for the great achievements, latest achievements. And now I would like to ask Mr. Blagoj Bocharski, the Minister of Transport and Communication. Here's my first question. Could you tell us about the green lane concept promoted in the Western Balkan region?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Dear guest, dear President, Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister, I will speak in Macedonian language.
In one sentence, I would like to give an overview, an introduction to the situation that we are facing today, that is the COVID crisis. The period that is behind us is a difficult time in the energy sector, in the transport sector, and all the remaining services, something that all the countries have faced. The governments and the countries were left with no other opportunity but to start working hard and increase the cooperation among all the sectors aimed at revitalization of the economy. And the transport sector was one of the most harshly affected sectors affected by the crisis. The green lane concept was promoted in the Western Balkans as a temporary and fast response to the COVID crisis for all cross-border activities among the countries with the aim of a fast flow of passengers and products and goods. This has proven to be one of the most successful examples of regional cooperation. The greatest benefit to preserve financial economic flows in the region. Not only did it provide to have economic benefits, but also an immensely beneficial measures to protect the transport sector. This is a sector that provides the transport of medicines, of goods, etc. We need to find innovative ways to mitigate the consequences of the crisis, but also to offer sustainable solutions for the future. One is trade cooperation by free movement of people and goods, a timely supply of goods whenever it is necessary. That's why these two concepts of green lines, which has been accepted by the EU, but also accepted by the 6 Western Balkan countries. And this involves a set of joint measures to tackle the crisis. The pandemic situation is currently stable, but given the uncertainty brought about the COVID crisis, this is a still ongoing crisis that affects us all. So mutual cooperation among the countries, the economies, the companies needs to continue and at an increasing pace. We need to strengthen the green corridors in the entire region together with the EU. This is why the Republic of North Macedonia makes maximum efforts to connect with our neighbors, creating systems and measures and policies, and I believe that this yields significant results as a response to this crisis. Additional facilitation is provided by the one-stop shop borders with Tabanovce. This has been commended and welcomed by all our neighboring countries, and this is something that should be used and applied in the remaining border crossings. In the past period, as a government, we have contributed to facilitating the protocols and procedures, transporting protocols and procedures. There are exemptions for the domestic transporters, but also for foreign transiting transporters. And this has been a significant benefit, a way of cooperation, providing a strong contribution to the recovery from this COVID crisis.
And now, my question from Aris to Ari. It's for us, Mr. Naim and the IFC. In infrastructure, IFC has been a strong promoter of PPPs globally and across our region. What benefits do you see for PPPs versus public investments for a country like North Macedonia in particular? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aris. Mr. President, Mr. Minister of Finance Bessimi, it's really an honor for me to be here. IFC is part of the World Bank Group, and we are one of the leading international financial institutions that focuses only on private sector development. And yesterday, I think in the finance panel, we heard it all. The country at the exit of this crisis needs to rebuild its fiscal space, and at the same time it needs to invest in the infrastructure that will create the sustainable growth of tomorrow. So typically, and in normal times, we believe that developing countries must invest 5% of their GDP in infrastructure every year. This is even much stronger now, the need for investment in infrastructure in a context of the need for more competitiveness and connectivity for North Macedonia, the need to embrace the green transition, the need to digitalize the economy, and also when we think of social infrastructure, the need to provide better healthcare, education services to its people. So for us as IFC and together with other partners, we strongly believe that the most impact we can have in North Macedonia is to help your government design, structure, implement a small number of strategic public-private partnerships in infrastructure that would help you attract private capital into infrastructure. But here I want to make a very important point. Much more than private capital, what we believe is important in a public-private partnership is that they offer the opportunity to attract know-how, experience from the best players around the world. I'd like to emphasize here that we are in a time of technological disruption, and we are deciding on investments that are going to commit us for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Road, airports, hospitals. And so no government today is able by itself to bring the innovation, the know-how, the experience that partners who have global leadership in those areas are able to bring. So let me give you a few examples. I mean, in road construction now, we need to take into account the needs of the electric mobility of the future that is in a few years from now, not that far away. In waste to energy, in water treatment, I mean, all water treatment plants now must be net zero energy. The digital, the artificial intelligence, I mean, cloud computing is affecting all areas of the traditional infrastructure as we know it, healthcare services also. So the main reason why we see PPPs can really help a country like North Macedonia is by bringing not only the capital, but also this expertise and this know-how that is indispensable for these projects. The other reason, of course, is to bring private efficiency, private focus on service delivery, but also on monetizing, I mean, monetizing assets, monetizing economic return, and therefore being efficient in running those operations. And then I want to say, and going back to a point that Mr. Rickling made, developing a few large, competitively tendered PPPs for North Macedonia will really be very helpful in putting the country on the map of the investment community globally. You want to signal that this is an environment that is open for business. We want to signal transparency. We want to signal commitment to work public and private sector with each other. And therefore, I'm very confident that institutions like IFC, EBRD, EIB can help you really create a few cases that would define the future of the country for the next 40 years. I'll stop here right now.
Okay. Thank you, Ari, for your comments and for your detailed analysis, I would say, and the examples you gave to us. We will continue with Elisabeta Georgieva from the Chamber of Commerce, a representative of the business community, and here's my first question. How can the private sector be more involved in increasing investment? How do you think this can be achieved? And what conditions would be provided for that? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Valhos, Mr. President, Mr. Minister of Finance, dear representatives from international domestic institutions. First, on my personal behalf as Vice President of the Economic Chamber of Macedonia and also on behalf of the Chamber, allow me to greet you and thank you for this opportunity to share our ideas, opinions and views on today's topic of this panel. Let me also congratulate the Ministry of Finance for the excellent organization of the first annual conference of this type. And concerning your question, the answer is yes. The private sector can be more involved in increasing investment and to achieve these opportunities. I will briefly underline a few facts that go in favor of that. One, investments are the key to the recovery of Macedonian economy amid a pandemic, but also in the long term to achieve the necessary GDP growth rates of over 5%, aiming to expedite the convergence with part of the EU countries. Two, we know that investments can come from two sources. One, public investments that are financed of the budget and private investments. In our country, in brief, the size of the planned public investments in the past 2 decades matches the possibilities and the development level of the economy. Concerning the realized investments, where the realization rate gravitates around 80% of the projections, they are insufficient for a more serious economic development for the next period. Two, it is very important for us as business community, as mentioned, Vice President, is very good that the government of our country announced a new cycle of investment for the next period, from 2021-2027 of over 8.2 billion euros. And in accordance with the Green Deal for the EU countries, our country too is joining the commitments to environmental protection, green economy projects, energy efficiency, digitalization, etc. And the Economic Chamber of North Macedonia will follow the implementation, and it will aspire to use all potential to include the private sector, business community in these projects. Four, to allow the private sector carry out the announced investments, apart from carefully design the measures against the pandemic, we should solve, we as government, we all stakeholders in our country, the decades-long systemic weaknesses that affect the competitiveness of the Macedonian economy, such as the size of the parafiscal charges, the insufficient efficiency of the administration at both central and local level, especially with issuing building permits and various other documents that are essential to the completion of the investment project. Also promotion of the road and rail infrastructure, as well as facilitation of the tracked flow across the borders. Part of these challenges, we as Chamber these challenges are being currently addressed to the governmental institution, but it is very important, especially amid these difficult conditions, for the companies to expedite these processes to fulfill the potential for private investment. And five, as mentioned with the President Pendarovski, last but not the least is the factor of quality workforce. The latest joint activities of the government of North Macedonia and the Economic Chamber of Macedonia led to a drastic increase in the number of companies that take part in the dual education, to 211 companies, which is a step in the right direction. The next development stage of the Macedonian economy will depend on the quality and, of course, very important, of skills of the workers and especially technical staff. And it would be necessary for the next period to undertake continuous activities in increasing the investment and competitiveness of, first of all, domestic companies, and some of those activities shortly are for the tax system to provide low taxes through the tax policy revision through the prism of its protective and development function, full functionality and support from the administration and systemic reduction of the bureaucratic procedures, and of course timely fulfillment of the obligation to the companies on the part of the state, municipalities and the public enterprises. And I will finish to improve the competitiveness of the economy. The main impulse for economic growth must emerge from the private sector. Why from the private sector? Because only the private sector can create economic well-being and new jobs in the long term. Must be supported business community by the institutions according to the objective market criteria, and it is very important to have efficient action of justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your complete answer. It is obvious that you fully understand the problems of the private sector. And I will pass now to our next speaker, panelist, Mrs. Daniela Arsovska. Here's my question. What are the opportunities for the private sector to adapt to the European Green Deal? The floor is yours.
Which is new throughout Europe. It became very evident since the start because we were the ones who devoted not only to zero emissions to 2050 as the Green Deal actually has for its challenge, we also devoted to zero emissions up to 2030, which is, I think, a very optimistic agenda, but we also had very good results in the first year of beginning with this campaign for climate action. Although I know that this is a priority, and although I know that this is something of importance, I would like to revert to something which I think is even more important at this moment, because, as I spoke previously, because the Green Deal and everything which is connected to people's health is something which is highly important. At this point, we are also, I would say, in front of another challenge, which is the challenge of survival. We have to find a way to adapt and to survive, taking care of people's health, but also in the same time we have to worry for the economy, because without the economy we have nothing. As you are probably well aware, we were part of the team which was giving suggestions for the measures for economic recovery or economic help measures throughout this pandemic period. And we actually supported and we gave the measures, some of the measures, which were highly beneficial to help save the jobs in the country, and also which helped save the companies, especially the micro, small and medium enterprises in the country. So I would say parallel into the Green Deal and into what's very important for the environment, it's also very important for us to take care of people's health, but also it's very important for us to take care of the economy and to have everything which is necessary for the people to live and to survive. And this is for them to have, in this type of crucial periods of their lives, strength, to have everything which they need to survive financially. And this is, I would like to say, our primary role at this moment. As Macedonian Chambers of Commerce, we will continue to support these measures, and I would really, really hope that I will see in the following period that the government will also initiate a new set of measures which will help the economy, which will help the SMEs, and which will help the citizens of our country, because at the end of the day, without being able to survive, we won't be able to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much for letting us know about your agenda and your very important initiatives. Now we are passing to Mr. Nebi Hoxha, the President of the Economic Chamber of North and West Macedonia, and here's my first question. Mr. Chairman, private companies, have they shown any will of investing in general? Do you think they have the necessary will and capabilities to adopt to the new way of thinking and investing? The floor is yours.
Nice conference. Dear panelists, dear President, dear guest, it's my honor to be part of this conference, to give our clear messages from the business aspect about having better conditions and environment in our country. We heard the ministers, the vice president, that we need to be regionally integrated, to have green corridors, to have better cooperation between our countries. But from the aspect of the business, we see that we have some leaks in this aspect, considering that the West Balkan countries, especially the horizontal way, the Corridor 8, we are very late with investment in infrastructure as highways and railways, because we are very close to each other like capitals, but we are very far in time of moving the goods and the people between our countries. So this is one of the very important things that we have to think for the future, to have more chance and to develop our companies as well. We know that the societies are and need to be service of the people to do things better. But also we know that our country is ready to accept this change for climate change, to give possibility to also to the businesses to invest in a green economy as well. Also, the private sector has proven that they can be crucial and decisive in very turbulent periods. COVID-19 pandemics proved us all the health and economic well-being of the citizens is symmetric to one another when it comes to importance. Therefore, the private sector should be and will be included in the process of economic recovery in the post-COVID period, but also will be included with investments that are in accordance with standards of climate adaptation. North Macedonia as a country, as it is, with not much an experience on that direction, will have to handle this institutionally, and institutions should play a major role when it comes to giving assistance and guidance to the private companies and investors, helping them on acquiring funds which are specific to the purpose and giving them various administrative facilities. Our businesses have proven to have courage to take the steering wheel on crucial moments of our country by investing at what all thought not the appropriate time, by proving that professionalism and knowledge they have is enough to face an obstacle regardless of what nature what is. So the cooperation between private sector and the public is necessary, and in that demand we have almost 2 years the private-public dialogue between 4 chambers and the government to have better cooperation and to solve all these needs from the private aspect of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and your optimistic view. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of North Macedonia, ladies and gentlemen, we have to pass now to the second round, and I will start with my first question with Deputy Prime Minister Fatmir Betici. What measures were taken to make the Macedonian economy more resilient, and how do you plan to tackle the pressure for increasing the public debt to maintain overall budget liquidity?
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, it's a quite broad one, but I will try to link it with my first response on the first question. First, all the economic measures which the government has undertaken in the COVID period, as I said, were linked with the recovery period. Knowing how fragile the Macedonian economy is. But we have to admit that there are overall challenges, and the first overall challenge that was that the supply chain or the value chain for vital industries was at risk. And normally there are 2 things out of it. Either you prepare your local economy to be more competitive, or you prepare the regional economy to be more competitive. And we as a government actually said we will do both, but we will try to support the local economy to be ready, to be more competitive in order to accept the challenge of the regional competitiveness. Because we do see that the only way how to get out of the COVID-19 and the fast recovery is if the regional market, the region of Western Balkans 6 would be able to become part of the value chain in the larger economies. Having said that, we inside the countries actually try to be consistent in all different areas. We prepared last year the midterm plan for management of public debt. We prepared the midterm plan for accelerated growth, and together with that we prepared the intervention plan for investment. All together would have to address the issue of dealing with the public debt that you mentioned, coming back to the levels of prior COVID-19, but at the same time enabling our economy to get a chance to become where it should be. And that's to produce the significant growth which will be needed in order to, what the other speakers said, have improved quality of life of our citizens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, for being so precise. And now it's my second question to EBRD and Mr. Jürgen Richtering. Sir, how has the perception of the financial sector towards climate change, and in particular climate risks, evolved in recent years? What are the current trends, and how is EBRD responding to this change in perception? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for this very relevant question. My family is coming from the region in Germany where you saw the flash flooding a few weeks ago. We've seen all the terrible pictures coming from New York, the flooding, the fires in France and California. In EBRD's countries of operations between 2008 and 2018, the losses because of climate change are estimated by us about 25 billion. Closer to this region, 2014, the floods in Serbia cost roughly 2 billion. Bosnia and Herzegovina, 1.8 billion. This is real money, and out of this 25 billion, only 1 billion is estimated to be insured. Banks, therefore, do change their attitude towards assessing financial risk, and also, by the way, in terms of financial disclosure. EBRD is firmly committed to the Paris Agreement, like probably all of us here at this panel. Every project at EBRD is Paris aligned, and we have made the commitment that over half of all the projects we finance do have a green angle by 2025. In that respect, I don't want to be too nice to the government of North Macedonia, but compliments to you as a government. You are firmly committed to the same goal as well. You have an NDC, or for the people who are maybe a little bit less in that topic, it's basically a country climate strategy. And in that respect, we just heard the minister talking about gas. Some people might not understand how gas fits into that. It's actually a pathway to, it's a low carbon pathway. Then a last personal comment. I believe, and it's dark, but most of you are probably not millennials. I don't see many tennis shoes or basketball shoes in the audience, so this makes me believe that this is probably the political and business elite. What I understood during the last few days with speaking to many of you is that there has been a, let's call it a mini brain drain from North Macedonia. It is my firm belief that young people, they actually want to work for companies more and more who have a purpose, they can be proud of. So I think, of course, it's us who can drive a certain change, but it's actually also you who can do the right thing by making sure that you work with the highest integrity, that you have sustainability in your flag. And in my discussions also with the private sector here, I see this more and more, so I think the future is bright for the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being so realistic and accurate. My next question for Liliana Pavlova from the EIB. The EIB has an important and growing role in the EU economy and beyond. It is fully engaged, in particular, in the European Green Deal. How the EIB is adapting its investments to contribute to the green recovery. What would be your priorities when it comes to green and digital agenda in North Macedonia? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, of course, I would like once again to really reconfirm our strong commitment in supporting North Macedonia's economic development, infrastructure development, and really supporting the private sector and in providing growth and competitiveness. And here I would like to say that we do have quite a strong pipeline of projects which we are supporting both the private sector but also the public sector with the different infrastructure projects we have. And in here I would like specifically to mention and of course to congratulate our strong partners, which is the Development Bank of North Macedonia. We recently signed as an immediate response to the pandemic 100 million loan in support of SMEs, providing in short-term liquidity support and in long-term support in investments for recovery as part of the green and digital recovery process of the country. So, of course, we are able to continue and to further extend this kind of support in line with the green and digital transition priorities which were already outlined by the Deputy Prime Minister, ministers, and the partners in the fellow speakers. But speaking on really adaptation and green and digital transition, as Jürgen already mentioned, we all, the international financial institutions like EIB, being the EU Climate Bank, are also adopting our financing, our operations. We recently adopted a climate bank roadmap where we clearly outline our top priority by the end of the decade to mobilize €1 trillion of additional financing for climate adaptation, mitigation, and environmental sustainability investments, supporting the EU member states and the region. And to allocate more than 50% of our lending to this kind of projects, and of course all our investments are Paris aligned. A part of this, of course, as it was clearly mentioned, climate adaptation and climate transition in the private sector, we still see that many of the companies in Europe and in the Balkans and here are still not yet convinced. So we definitely need to provide all necessary support in the process in supporting the specific measures for climate adaptation. As well as with the digitalization, while we see that for digitalization, even the pandemic was kind of the way to switch, to rethink that digitalization is already the reality, is not anymore something to think about. So we have excellent examples in the region, like in Serbia with Connecting Schools digitalization project, with supporting with guarantees the private sector to companies to adapt. So I really am convinced that that together we can really identify the specific measures to continue this important process in rolling out the green and digital agenda, the European Economic and Investment Plan. We have, as I mentioned, the rail project, the Railway Corridor 8, which hopefully we will be soon, despite the delay, to unlock the financing and to launch the implementation of the project. We are happy to be lead financier for the project. We supported the gas interconnector, which the minister mentioned. Another important element of the energy transition of the country and of diversification of the energy mix, which is an important priority for the country. And last but not least, supporting municipalities, supporting local authorities in their infrastructure development. As a follow-up, as a continuation of our support, we are now working on providing all 80 municipalities with support for waste supply and wastewater treatment facilities in order also to support this plan for climate adaptation. So just in conclusion to say that North Macedonia has made significant progress in its economic reform program, and I really hope that soon the accession, the EU accession path will follow the next step, a really important part of the integration, which is much needed to attract foreign investments and to integrate fully to the European single market.
Thanks for your comments, which shows your continued support and commitment towards North Macedonia. Minister Bekteshi, tourism is a sector that has suffered a lot from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. What is your strategy in the direction of tourism development?
Thank you, Aris. As you already mentioned, as a sector, it has suffered a lot, not only in North Macedonia, but globally. But it's very important to underline the point that together with the Chamber of Commerce and with the involvement of all the stakeholders, North Macedonia, within all the packages regarding the economic measures we provided in order to support the economy, the tourism was one of the most supported sectors in North Macedonia as well, even though being a landlocked country with limited capacities in attracting foreign tourism, we are working in several segments, especially in order to improve the infrastructure, including here the offer, to broaden the offer when it comes to low-cost airlines, but also to attract huge tour operators in order to put North Macedonia within the tourism map and to their offer globally. So we don't have a national approach when it comes to the development of tourism, but we want to have a regional approach. Being a small and landlocked country, we are working very closely with our neighbors in order to provide mutual offer, especially for countries which are far away from Europe, as the countries in Asia, in Africa, but why not in North America and South America as well. We had a great lesson from COVID-19 when it comes to the digitalization in the tourism sector, not only the promotion, but also in providing better services for the tourists in order for them to have a better picture for North Macedonia and for the region. Within the CEFTA Secretariat at the moment, we are adopting several measures as Western Balkans, where we want to recognize all the licenses, especially the licenses which our travel agencies, tour operators are getting in North Macedonia, so they are recognized in the neighbor countries and vice versa, which will give additional opportunity for those companies in this sector in order to attract tourists in our country. Within the intervention investment plan, we are using the model of PPP, having in mind that there is a strain on the budget, not only in North Macedonia, but also to the other Western Balkan country, not to use direct funds from the budget. So together with IFC, we have finalized the new reform on PPPs, and we have finished all the feasibility studies when it comes to the development of additional new ski resorts. So upgrading the Popova Shapka resort, but also coming up with new feasibility studies and potential new locations in order to develop the winter tourism in North Macedonia. So we are expecting huge investments from the private sector, for sure in cooperation with the public sector, especially in development of ski resorts. We are already investing in digitalization. We have fulfilled all the criteria when it comes to the receive of the safe stamp for North Macedonia. So we have put North Macedonia in the map of the safe countries when it comes to the post-COVID period, which is quite important for the tourism, for the tourists in order for them to visit our country.
Thank you very much, Minister, for letting us know about your specific and detailed plans. Minister Bocharski, we are discussing about financing of recovery and growth, the public investment and stimulating investment demand. In regional context, what the Ministry is undertaking in order to stimulate the investments in infrastructure and facilitate border crossing transport. 3 minutes, please.
As regards the issue of the road infrastructure, we are in the central position on the Balkan Peninsula with the two pan-European corridors passing through North Macedonia, Corridor 8 and Corridor 10. It is important for us. It is a natural cross road, and it is crucial of us to develop the road infrastructure. That is where we see one of the solutions for fighting against the pandemic. In the future period, we will focus on development of smart models in the transportation system. For the first time in the country, we will introduce intelligent transportation system on Corridor 10. It is an important project, and I expect from this year to start the implementation and to develop the green mobility, the border crossing routes that provide opportunity for fast transportation of goods and people. For the development of infrastructure, I'm glad to tell you that the construction sector that works on the road infrastructure, the gas pipelines, pass through the period. Very difficult, but the jobs are not lost. The country is investing in the infrastructure, the roads, gas pipelines, and other projects. As regards the roads, apart from the 3 express roads that are built at the moment, I can also open a discussion to emphasize actually the beginning or continuation of the branch of Corridor 10D from Gradsko to Prilep, another express route, very important, that which means that we are continuing the development of the road and railway infrastructure. Also to point out that we are also working on Corridor 8, the east branch, Corridor 8 in the west branch of it, on the territory of the whole country. In the recent years we have invested, we have rehabilitated, revived 1,000 kilometers of roads, which is crucial for overcoming the crisis. Because I don't have more time, just one more aspect, the aspect of transportation of goods in the second quarter of this year compared to the second quarter in 2020. We have growth of 23% in transportation. Railway transportation in the second quarter compared to last year is 20.9% growth, and the growth of passengers, air passengers, a raise of 128.2%, which is a very good positive argument that we are coming out of the crisis. The economy is following this process, and I believe we will continue jointly, the country and the business sector, to fight against the unfavorable conditions. Thank you.
And information. Mr. Naim, PPP are often seen as complex and costly. What does it take, in your experience, to implement good PPPs that achieve their objectives and remain affordable for the taxpayers?
Thank you.
3 minutes.
They are expensive and complicated. No, all governments in the world struggle with how to provide high-quality services to their citizens at the most affordable cost. And so it is true to recognize that PPPs, if a government has a choice between a public investment and a PPP, the PPP will always require more technical skills, structuring skills, financial skills, project management, legal skills that make the project more complicated. And for that, and for the reason I mentioned before, we don't think there is a choice. There is no option but better leveraging private investment in the infrastructure. And so how can we make these services more affordable for the citizens? I think I see both technical and political answers to that. The first one is to make those PPPs highly competitive. And that is what requires most capacity. The government must be in the leadership. We can help, as an international financial institution, build PPP units, build expertise within the administration. But at the end of the day, what is going to make the success of the PPP is the fact that the best players, local and international, compete to offer the best design, the best solution, the best technology, and the best price. On the political side, and as we are, with an enormous opportunity ahead created by the European Commission with the Green Deal and the Western Balkan Investment Framework, etc., I think it's very important for us to learn also, both governments and international financial institutions, to learn how best we can leverage the enormous subsidies that are going into public infrastructure so that they can also benefit, the affordability of a few key projects that are structured as PPPs. And that's part of the dialogues that we are having with the European Commission, and that I think where there is a unique opportunity to increase the affordability of a few key PPPs that need to be structured as PPPs.
Thank you very much. Within 3 minutes. Thanks for sharing with us your experience in such an important issue. Now, Ms. Georgieva, whether the private sector wishes and whether it can invest in these times of ongoing pandemic. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. The answer of these questions has been confirmed, and it is not based on personal opinion, rather on the survey into the planned investment of our member companies conducted in August this year. In the period from 30 July to 25 August this year, the Economic Chamber of North Macedonia conducted a second survey among the membership titled as Investment of the Economic Chamber of North Macedonia members companies in the following 12 months, from September 2021 to August 2022. The survey was made up of two parts. First part was the general question regarding the size, activity, ownership of the companies, and second part was very important for the planned of investment of the companies, not only domestic, also foreign companies in the framework of the chamber for the mentioned period. And the survey included 200 companies, micro, small, medium, large companies. 65% of them were predominantly domestic, and the rest, while 35% of them were predominantly foreign companies from various sectors, such as construction, building materials, non-metal industry, agriculture, and food industry, financial organization, and IT technologies, information communication technologies. Out of 200 companies, 56% of the responding companies focus their activities home and abroad. 31% focus their activities only on Macedonian market, and the rest of responding companies focus their activities abroad. And what shows the survey presented specific data directly from the business community, which are clear that the companies intend to invest in the next period, and the conclusions reached in the survey are as follows. First, very important, that in the period from September 2021 to August 2022, 94% of companies that have responded to the survey are planning investment. The total investment size of these companies amounts to 600 million euros, and according to investment type, most of the responding companies are planning investment in machinery and equipment, 35%, information communication technologies, equipment and software, research development, 15%, building, 15%, and while 10% of them planning investment in other capital projects. And what is very important here, and I would like to mention that relative to 2019, being the last comparable year before the COVID pandemic, 75% of the companies said that investment planned for the following 12 months are higher. 38% of the companies say that increase relative to 2019 will exceed 51%. And this is very important. I will underline that the realization of the planned investment will mostly contribute to the following effects: large turnover, large profit, opening new jobs in the next period, larger production, and of course, larger export. Most of the companies, 63%, said that the complex and inefficiently applied regulation and the steep expenses like parafiscal charges, permits, etc., are the greatest limiting factors for the realization of the planned investment. And I will finish that the survey show us, then we can conclude that the companies are still ready to invest in the next period filled with many challenges caused by COVID pandemic, and of course the key investment conditions should be provided by all stakeholders to make larger investments in the next period.
Thank you very much, and thanks for studying so precisely the issues of the private sector. Now, Ms. Sasovska, what kind of support does the private sector expect? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, it's not about what we expect. It's, I think, what is necessary for the private sector to survive at this point and afterwards to recover from what has been happening in this past year and a half. I believe that it's important to have a very strong institutional support. This is one of the main pillars on how we can achieve economic growth in the following years. And I would say that as the Macedonian Chambers of Commerce, we have appealed and we have sent also some of the requests to the governments, and a great deal has been also implemented into the economic measures for the private sector. It's very important in the following period to have financial but also non-financial measures. For the financial measures, we had some of them up to the period when it was the third wave of the COVID pandemic, but now, as you can see, this is persistent, and we need to have something additionally so that everyone who has invested in themselves but also in their businesses can survive this period. The second thing would be the non-financial measures, which are highly important, and that's giving to the people something which they expect and what they need in order for them to be able to survive on their own. What they expect is tackling the corruption. This is one of the main issues. The challenges need to be resolved, and they need to be resolved systematically in the following period. The rule of law, implementing the rule of law in the country. We also need to work on all of these issues which are of high importance, not only for this period, but at this period they're highly stressed because, as you know, the private sector has more than these challenges. It has an entire pandemic on the other side. So what we can do is help them, give them a good environment to conduct businesses and to keep the jobs, to help them by tackling the corruption, to help them by implementing the rule of law in the country, to help them by giving them a good environment for them to be able to recover, to help them by tackling the gray economy, the shadow economy, something which has been continuously rising in the country and which has been detected by us as one of the biggest challenges, as biggest problems, not only to the period up to now, but something which is going to be crucial in the following period as well. So this is, I think, one of the things, the financial measures, and the second one would be the non-financial measures on how to help the private sector to adapt, to survive, and then to recover. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your views and your specific proposals. Now, the last questions to Mr. Hoxha. How can the society rely on private companies when it comes to investment, and especially now that all economies are dealing with the wounds suffered from the pandemic crisis? The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you.
Please, 3 minutes. I think we are on time.
As the last speaker, the crisis had a large impact on the companies and the economy in general, especially in first month when the pandemic was attacking the people, and it was reflected in the country's economy. Mm-hmm. We as a chambers was always close to the businesses, supporting them, asking them about the problems they have in their job duties, and all this informations we took from the private sector, we addressed to the governments, and thanks God we had a very good cooperation with all chambers, with the government, taking in consideration that our country was leading in the region about the measures against the pandemic in this situation. And we hope that we was in between the crisis and the measures what government took to protect us. We asked the government to protect the businesses for short terms because that help will result with the success of the businesses in the long term. So all that kind of help is very important for the businesses to survive in this crisis and to reach their goals. Also, we ask for the businesses that was closed with a decision of the government to be supported in totally, because there was they was having a very difficult situation to close their companies and their employers to be out of the job. So this is one part of the help we ask, but we had also the other part of the businesses that they was really successful in this period. Just to have an information, only 100 companies, members of our chamber, they had almost 300 million euros invested in 2020. So we had to keep the balance between the companies that feel the crisis and the companies that can, they could have the success and growing up their businesses.
Thank you very much for this very interesting view. Dear speakers, I would like to thank you all for the very interesting views you have expressed. We are really grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts with all of us. A written summary of our discussion will be prepared by Professor Trajko Slavevski and will be available soon. Professor, thank you for your contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us at this session.